Didn't really start like that. Skills are expensive. So you've got to learn your craft on the way. I'm so grateful that I did do that. But I just believe that if you want something bad enough and you continue to work hard, that's the only way of making things happen.
Welcome back to another episode of Superwoman Isn't Real. And today we are going to be having a whole deep dive with Dr. Jane Leonard, who has so kindly agreed to come in and talk to us actually about lots of different things, because we are yet to have actually firstly, a female doctor on. So this is something that I really, really wanted for the podcast. But you're not just a day-to-day doctor, you are also a TV personality. You now have clinics, so you're actually technically really a businesswoman.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're doing a lot of work in aesthetics, which I think is a topic that has not blown up recently. It's been blown up for a while, but there's a lot of things I want to dive into there. And I think you're just a really great role model for somebody who has had a really important milestone of turning 40 recently, and basically going at a pace and forging a path that is unconventional, different, and very inspiring and different. So there's lots and lots and lots that I want to talk about, and I want to dive into it all. But I want to start with the beginning. So let's just start with you. Let's start with a bit of background. I've sort of given a glossy overview.
Yeah, definitely.
The podcast is Superwoman Isn't Real for a reason. The idea being that we are often labelled as superwomen, women that seem to be running around doing a lot. And actually, it's a really awful double-edged sword, because you then feel like you can't fail and everything has to be perfect. And what I like to do is break that all down and be like, tell me actually about you, and tell me about where this started, and tell me about why you became a GP.
Yeah, definitely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I've been really looking forward to our chat. There's so many things to cover. I suppose rewinding back then to probably my childhood, I grew up in St Helens, so near Liverpool, a little town up there, and I just went to like a normal school and never really thought from a young age about sort of what path I was going to forge out. I think my mum and dad weren't in the medical field, but I was always really interested in science, that naturally kind of molded towards either medical related things or careers aligned to that, so things like physio. That was one of my interests to start off with. But I think growing up where I did, I don't know many people who have kind of done what I've ended up doing. So going back to role models and things like that, sometimes it's hard to kind of pitch out where you want to go if you can't really visualise it. Totally. So I feel really fortunate the way things have worked out as they have. Like I feel really privileged to be a trained doctor, to be a GP, and finding my way there, because I didn't really think of it as a starting point. Yes. You know, I feel very lucky that it's ended up that way. Like I loved going to medical school. I went to Manchester Medical School, which was only, well, say down the road. It wasn't too far from my family home and where I was brought up, but it was such a different environment, even though it was so close. I remember going there and feeling really inspired by the different people I met, and because the thing is with a little town, there's not many people that sort of go there, or not that many people that leave. Yes. So you go to a big city like I did in Manchester, where there was like 3 universities essentially within it. It was just like, wow, there's so many different people in every single way. So I think I was really inspired early on, just about doing different things and opening my eyes to thinking laterally about career things and personal life things as well. Yeah. So that was where I kind of did my sort of bread and butter and the foundations of my initial training. And then after medical school, I went to Australia. I went to Melbourne for a couple of years. Wow. And that it's quite a common thing actually for junior doctors to do.
Yes, because I know.
Yeah, it's interchangeable.
My sister's a dentist, and so I'm sort of in that community through her. Yeah. And so many of them do want to go to Australia. Yeah. And
I think for many reasons. I think the first one is because our qualifications are interchangeable. So for example, if I was like, right, I've got a dream to go to LA, I'd have to retrain from scratch there.
Crazy, isn't it?
Which is like, no one's got time for that really, unless you really have to do it and commit to. And particularly when you're that young, you don't really know where you're going to end up. No. So to make those kind of decisions, go into Australia, which essentially was just like apply for a job there and get all your visa and that sorted out, which they all did. And there's the hospital did for you. And then that was an amazing thing again, probably similar to university, like meeting different people, being inspired by different things that you wouldn't normally find out. So I think that was a big part of something that inspired me and really kind of opened my eyes actually to aesthetics, because I did a lot of work in dermatology, even though my main job was actually in a trauma centre. I ended up doing a bit of research in dermatology while I was there. And over there, is a lot more because it's not like the NHS. It does tend to be cosmetic work and sort of normal sort of day-to-day dermatological work, which is seen as more medical. The lines are blurred a little bit more than they are here. So yeah, so that was how...
I love the way you just described becoming Dr. Rich, and then I just decided, and I'm lucky I did, because, it's actually an amazing decision.
Yeah, I think...
And what a great, decision, because you've always got that piece of paper, right?
Yeah.
You've always got something that's so solid to fall back on. And I think when you're deciding what to study, and we make these decisions, I think, far too young.
Exactly, yeah.
Deciding at 17 really is the age where you're having to start thinking about university, and you don't know what you want to do at 17.
And also it's such a massive commitment, particularly in things like that where it's like a vocational thing.
Yeah.
So like medicine, law, dentistry, all those things, you go in to do that.
Yes.
The other things, there's the thing, I suppose you've got a job at the end of it, but also that's the only thing in case it's only natural to change your mind, particularly when you're that young.
Absolutely.
So that's the thing when I say I'm grateful about the way things have turned out, in the sense that, first of all, I was able to get into it, to stay in it, and to enjoy doing it, which a lot of people in their careers can't always say.
Yeah. And then you've done a jump, because this is really, I think, a huge jump to go from doing the medical degree to effectively now you're a business owner. So how many clinics do you have now?
So I work, I live and work in London.
Yep.
So I'm in Central, so near Selfridges and Soho, around that area. And then because I'm from the North, and because I started doing aesthetics in the North, I've got a core just group of, actually say patients, friends of mine now, so I've been treating them so long, up there. So I do a clinic every month. One is in Liverpool and one is in Cheshire, in Altrincham.
Wow. And so what was that jump like? Because I'm sure, and it sounds like you're still balancing the two a little bit, right?
Yeah, I think the main thing about it is, or the lucky thing in some ways about doing aesthetics, is I started doing it 10 years plus ago while I was doing my GP training. So it allowed me, where I was still working as a doctor and sort of keeping that solid foundation, and I kind of picked up the skills and built it up gradually. And although reflecting on that, or anybody hearing that will probably think, well, that sounds crazy, working as a doctor and trying to do essentially another career, it didn't really start like that. It's a little bit, it's like after work, seeing a patient and just getting used to doing Botox and following them up, and not having to rely on it, in the sense of going, right, I took a big leap financially, and the pressure of doing that, of setting up a business, it didn't really happen like that for me.
Yeah.
So I only really needed to gradually move more into it as the demand for it became more.
You're a great example, because there's two schools of thoughts when you're in a career and you're trying to learn something else, or train in something else, or launch something else. One is just jump into it and give up everything, which is actually what I did. I was in banking. I completely jumped to set up a wellness company. I had no experience in being an entrepreneur. I was like, cool, gave up literally goodbye, handed in my resignation and did it. Not something that I would recommend for the faint-hearted, because it was crazy for the first 2 years. Or the other school of thought is exactly what you described. Keep your day job and retrain. And I guess yours are kind of interlinked and becoming more interlinked, aren't they now?
And that's the thing, just from sort of thinking about your story compared to mine, in the sense that you had to do that shift. If you're in banking, it takes up probably every minute of your day. Everyone's in the city, aren't they, at 6 a.m. and get home at
and then you're doing your company a disservice if your brain is just, it's so all-consuming.
Exactly. So I think, because with mine, it meant that I was still, building up my GP experience, and that's what I spent all the time working towards. And even though I think at that time, doing aesthetics or Botox and fillers, or something like, God, you don't have to work as hard, you can earn more money. It actually isn't like that.
Yeah.
It's something, like you say, it's doing business, it's developing a skill. Skills are expensive because they are time and experience and knowledge and education that brings together that service. And I could only honestly and ethically offer that once I was able to do it.
Yes.
So you've got to learn your craft on the way. So that is definitely, I think, for me, I still was like, right, I'm not going to just be going, right, here's a bright light, so let's do a Botox clinic. I stuck at doing a GP, and I think for what has kind of moved on to my other parts of my career, I'm so grateful that I did do that, because I wouldn't be doing half the things I'm doing now if I just jumped ship.
What was that? Was that just listening to an inner intuition? Because obviously things have unfolded now, right? And things are growing really nicely, and you're one of the doctors on Embarrassing Bodies now,
exactly,
on the TV, guys, if you want to see more of Dr. Jane. How does stuff someone might be listening to this going, how does stuff like that start to unfold?
Yeah.
What's your belief system around your life unfolding in the direction
I
you
think
want?
I just believe that if you want something bad enough and you continue to work hard, that's the only way of making things happen. I think there is an element of luck, there's an element of, you know, people that you know, but unless you kind of keep going at it, it's that commitment. It's like, is it talent? Is it, yes, I really believe it's kind of keeping your head down to something and working hard at it all the time. And I think going back to how that happened, I mean, doing embarrassing bodies honestly is a dream come true for me, and I think I only got into that because I stayed being a GP.
Yes.
Because it's about being a GP, nothing else. So
Yeah.
it's very much that it actually all came about because before COVID, I'd been selected to do a cosmetic show, and then I can't remember whether it was something like selling sunsets for cosmetics. I was like, God, this is going to be amazing. I can't do that. Always do them racing around London and all this glamorous life.
Yeah.
But obviously, then it's like, no, COVID's hit now. That's wiped. And then I rejoined the NHS and went to work in a COVID clinic. And then I wasn't really, I don't think if I was posting about it that much, but I was doing a lot, because I was seen to on the front line, I was doing lots of things that will probably be seen on social media about it. So the production company got back in touch after COVID saying, we scrapped the cosmetic thing, but would you be interested in auditioning for this? And at the time, I think again, like at the time, I didn't really not believe. I think it's having that confidence that I didn't really have to think I'd ever get it, so I just blindly went for it. You know what I mean? It's that thing of, you know, when, you know, you said about the cosmetic clinic, you know, why didn't I jump into it or do it? I think truthfully, I didn't necessarily have the confidence to do something like that, or the experience, or, you know, I'm quite like a bold person when it comes to doing things and believing in myself in some respects, but also others. It takes me a bit of time to, I suppose, develop the evidence that I have done it.
Yes.
So like now we're doing that embarrassing bodies and doing the different clinics that I'm doing, and even to be sat here talking to you, it's that idea that this imposter syndrome, which we can all fall into, I've got evidence that, yeah, Jane, you have actually done these things, rather than boldly being like, this is what I believe.
And I love that you've just said hard work. This is a theme, honestly. Every woman I've had on here so far, I'm so lucky because everyone's been really honest, open, accomplished. And it's always, for some reason, comes back to hard work. There's literally no one that's come on and gone, oh, and then the opportunity landed in my inbox out of nowhere. I mean, it doesn't exist. And I think actually just the framework of hard work and presenting that to people is really like, great. Like, I love it because it's like doable for everybody. Like, apply yourself, you know, and just do the non-glamorous bits too and see what happens. But it's another thing as well, because again, women, we are so good at going, I just got lucky.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not luck. It's because you were actually working hard. And like you said, you were in a COVID clinic and you were working and you were grafting and you were staying true to yourself and your profession. Which is why.
And if I'd have not done that, then I would never have been picked up to do what now. And I actually think that doing embarrassing bodies is a much better fit for me as a person. And the reason that it came about as well is, they recommissioned it after it'd been on for, I think, about 9 years before they got the team of the new doctor. So I'm one of three. It's about COVID was what all healthcare was about for 2 years plus, and it meant that people were forgetting about other things. Just because COVID's there, people are still getting problems with asthma, diabetes, heart failure, acne, everything. And it's like, that's not important anymore. COVID's here. And it was really bringing back, you know, taking away the barriers to consultation, reminding people about not only action in their own healthcare, but putting in systems again that keeping them well in a time that really opened our eyes of the importance of, you know,
looking after ourselves, the basics, right? As a GP, what were the most common things that you saw women come to you for facing? Because you were obviously a GP in your 20s as well, right? Where maybe some of these things were a little bit alien to you, you know, and now we have a bit more experience under our belt. And I'm like, whoa, we go through so much as well. My God, like my body, my poor body. Because also I've been through 2 pregnancies and 2 postnatal. And I know women around me that are now going through perimenopause. And it gives me this like, whoa, in like, you know, just the space of 20 years, our bodies.
Exactly, And I think, to answer your question, I think for me, looking back at the times I've been a GP from when I started to what I see now, naturally, because I am a female GP, I tend to see more female problems.
Yes.
But that said, the volume isn't, I'm not just seeing that. It is everything from, say, younger women experiencing problems with early stages related to periods, endometriosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, infertility issues all early on. And then not only the hormones related directly to women's health, the other impacts that can affect, so things like your skin, things like, your mental health.
Yeah.
I mean, that in itself. So I think the key things that I tend to see, because I'm female, because there's loads of it about female problems, mental health is a massive thing across the board for both sexes.
Yeah.
And I think because of my background in skin or that element of it, I have a general interest in that. So problems like acne, psoriasis, eczema, particularly eczema in children, I'm really interested in.
That's so interesting because my 4-year-old has eczema, and oh my God, being a mum of an eczema child was something I was so not prepared for. And I think it's on the rise. That's the sense that I get. I mean, I thought I was alone, and then you suddenly go to the hospital and the whole room is full of parents whose children have, dermatology problems and like eczema and really severe skin conditions. And it's, is it on the rise? Are we seeing more? Is it stress induced? Like not kids, obviously, but in adults?
Yeah, totally stress induced. I think the thing is with eczema, it's a condition that, it never really goes away. It's often atopic eczema, which is in the family of asthma and hay fever as well. It's caused by triggers. So you can keep it at bay by finding out what your triggers are and looking after your skin as and when it needs to. So the thing is with eczema, it can be extremely dry skin. The barrier of your skin isn't as robust as people without it. So looking after that barrier, so emollients, moisturise all the time. And when you get the flare-ups, so when there's breaks in that barrier, which puts you at risk of obviously the inflammation, which eczema is, but also the risk of infection, is getting on that quickly. And kids are the one that have the hardest to manage with that.
Oh my gosh.
But there will be a trigger. So for some children, it can be diet related.
Yes.
Other things, it can be stress related. Other things can be more, generally environmental. And that'll be the same for the other 3 things in the atopy umbrella, so the hay fever and asthma. But yeah, I think, is it on the rise?
I mean, for women especially, I'm noticing that, especially in our 30s, we're in the most stressful. Stress levels are only going up, right? We've had guests come on going, manage your stress levels, but really you think how, when we're running businesses, may have kids, may have not, it's still very fast paced, looking at your lifestyle, it's fast, right? So what are the things you're doing to manage this? Because the juggle is real. And at what point do you say no, and at what point do you say yes?
I think the main thing I try to manage things for is to be more present and more reflective. I mean, these are the buzzwords, aren't they? But actually do those things. So I think you get to a point, or particularly for me turning 40, you go what's the point of all these things? But you can be really relentlessly having your head down, the blinkers on, going, striving towards things all the time. And then you're like, actually, right, what am I actually killing myself here for?
What am I racing
for? What am I actually have I reached that point? What are you going after? You're going after the big clinic, you're going after having money, you're going after what actually is it?
Yeah.
And I think until you pull it back and go, right, actually now, and this is what I've been in the process of doing, probably in this year or moving forward into the new year, is actually putting together now a new 5-year plan of what, I've got all these great achievements, which I'm delighted, I'm so grateful for having, but actually moving forward and going, now what isn't the next plan? So I redefine the boundaries of what I'm trying to do.
Yes.
And I think, so that helps you be more present. It makes you reflect on different things and be grateful and just take stock of what was the effect of every step you've taken along it, what things are worth it and what things aren't.
And where do you want to put your energy to now?
Exactly.
Because our energy is limited.
Exactly, and it runs out.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Yeah, it's now focusing on that. I'm going, I really enjoy, I love doing those clinics up north. People are always like, you're up and down all the time. I'm like, but it's easy. We're only getting
Jane is everywhere.
It's fine. I don't mind. I love going there, get to see my family. I've got amazing friends up there. Just jump on the train from Euston, straight to where I'm going. It can take me 2 hours.
But you've made that decision and you've thought about it and you know it benefits you and you enjoy it.
And it's worth doing it. And it's not a drag to me at all. And the day that it does become that, then things will have to change because it's a lot in terms of time and effort to maintain it. But I think it's just trying to decide what is worth doing, what's serving you, and put it in that sense of priorities.
I love the you're making me want to go do this now, write my new 5-year plan. God, I might just write a 1-year plan, to be honest. That'll be enough for me at this stage.
Well, it's like,
it is that, isn't it? Like sometimes I had this great guest come on who said it so eloquently. She went, you have to constantly work on this. There's no such thing as like, you might get it right for 6 months and go, oh, I'm so happy, I'm thriving. But then guess what? You've got to work on it again. Because now your goals are different. You might prioritize things differently. You know, money might have been the number one goal, now it's not.
Exactly.
And so things are shifting all the time. And I think it's giving ourselves grace as humans to say we're a dynamic. It's constantly changing. This is not like a finished, done, got my plan ready.
There's many things that we're not in control of. So a lot of that change might not be that you're going to go, okay, right, this is what I'm going to do. Things can happen and change that really knock you off point. And that can affect you in terms of like what your goals are. Also as well, how you're feeling and able to keep those goals rolling. You never know with your physical health, your personal health, what happens in your relationships, if you've got a family, what's going on with them. All this stuff going on with mortgages, all these things that are out of our control might mean you've got to kind of take little detours along the way.
And be okay with that and remain really flexible, right? So you've turned 40.
Yep.
Wonderful milestone. And they do say 40s are the new 30s. So
yeah, I'm hoping that is true.
Well, you look like it's true. So that's a good sign. What did turning 40 mean to you? And what has that, how has that milestone sort of impacted you? And did you greet it with happiness and joy, or? Yeah,
if I'm honest with you, I think leading up to it, I was dreading it a little bit, and I don't really know why. I think for me, in terms of my professional life, all these tick boxes are there, right? So like what we're talking about, the clinic, GP, telly, podcast, all these things are there. But that's occurred because I've made sacrifice, I'd say, more so in my personal life. So at my age now, I'm 40, I'm single, I don't have kids. And leading up to that time, like I said, like when I was younger, or my 20s, I was in long-term relationships. Like I was engaged before I'd housed with people. I'd kind of done that. So in my 30s, being young, free and single, being in London suited me fine. Like there's nothing here that I've been like regretting that, and that was fine. But it's more when the number hits you, there are connotations to that, and like particularly related to fertility. So for me, I'd made the call, like I think I was 38 when I looked into it, but I did 2 rounds of egg freezing. So 1 round I did where I just basically did the egg harvesting and put them in the freezer. And then the second half, I actually made embryos with a sperm donor. And the reason I did this is because, first of all, with egg freezing, it's not a guaranteed insurance that I'm going to go, right, Jane, carry on having a great time, carry on doing what you're doing, and then in a couple of years' time, just going, right, let's get them out of the freezer, let's defrost them and then see what we're at. It doesn't always work that way.
That's so interesting to know, because again, I don't think people understand that.
Yeah, for me, I think the chances of it working is like less than 20%.
Right.
But if you do a second round of egg freezing and actually fertilise the eggs and make an embryo, they've got 98% chance of working.
That's a big difference.
Yeah.
That's a huge difference.
But obviously related to that is if I do that, I'm basically saying I'm going to have a baby on my own.
Yes.
Unless I end up getting in a relationship where, I don't know, that if that the person doesn't want to have a family and wants me, you know what I mean? It's all a bit, it's making a big definition.
There, I feel like you've made a smart decision for yourself, and we're not applauded enough for actually, like what I love about this is just a refreshing conversation.
Yeah.
It's a refreshing conversation to be like, your life can look like anything at any stage. And by the way, people could be in a relationship in their 30s, then get a divorce and be a single mum. Or, you know, get a divorce and not be a mum and be starting again at 40. And so it's just really refreshing to say.
I think the main thing about it, though, is that when we talk about these things in general, doing things like that, so it's not available to everyone because it's a lot on your body, a lot on you mentally, and it also costs. So to say what sort of message I don't want to begin is going, get to this age and then you can always fall back on this. It's actually quite a big thing to do for those 3 reasons.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate in able to be able to do it and get through it fine. So I suppose the only message to other women is, if this is a real priority to you and you really want to have a family and just to think about it earlier.
Yes.
Like it kind of crept up on me a little bit because, like you say, my
were
mind
busy.
is busy on other things, and I am happy and I am all right.
Yeah.
And I'm not really like longing to have a baby. I just don't know, because my life has changed so much over the last probably 10 years the most. God knows where I'm going to be, and I'll probably end up turning around at 45. Going, oh, actually, yeah, let's have the baby now. And go, oh no, Jane, you missed the boat 10 years ago. So at least I've kind of put that in place.
I just think, I mean, I don't know if this is London specific, but I think it's really now become normal for women to have babies well into their late 30s,
Yes.
well into their early 40s. It's almost like, and it's often when I'm speaking to like my sister who doesn't live in central London, where like people are still having babies in like their early 30s, but actually here,
Yeah.
I remember being at the hospital and I saw my date of birth and it was like one of the youngest on the list by a good
exactly,
7-8 years. And I have a huge group of friends that haven't even started trying for baby, you know, and so it is getting later and later and later
Yeah.
for women because we have other goals outside of
Yeah.
having a family. And so I think I said this to you before, would this all have happened had it happened in a different order? Possibly not.
Yeah, exactly.
And
like,
so you have to be mindful of the fact that a lot of these things have probably come your way because you've had your mindset.
and probably because I had the freedom to really just do, because I wasn't with anyone, to do what I wanted in that
Yes.
sense. So there is that. But obviously then there's pros and cons to that all the time.
Yes.
But I think the main thing about the family, the fertility, for women who really like want a baby, is to kind of think about it a bit sooner than I did.
Yeah. But also just think about it, right?
Yeah,
And weigh
exactly.
up
You don't
what
need
you're
to do anything,
saying.
yeah.
You could just hear about this and go, it's for me or it's not
Yeah.
for me, but at least go and ask questions and get
Exactly.
curious about it.
Yeah.
And is that something they can actually go to their GP for?
So I think related to finding out about your fertility and egg freezing, is not offered on the NHS unless you've got a medical reason. So for example, if you had breast cancer or you were going into something that required treatment, they'd put you through the egg freezing process as part of it. But say if it was me, no, I could have some tests, I think, depending on the situation, but most of the time it's something that's done in the private sector.
So it's a
the
lot-
egg freezing definitely is. The lead up to it to be checked is actually part of the process. So it's tended to do as an umbrella. And there's lots of private companies now that are out there where it isn't a massive cost associated with it, just to find out where your fertility is. So have some basic blood tests done and to maybe have a scan or something like that. So you find out the baseline. Outside the NHS, it doesn't cost the earth, and we'll at least then decide which way you're going to go. Because, for example, somebody might find in their early 30s their fertility maybe isn't where they thought it was, in which case they need to move a bit quicker or not. So there is, I'd say that is a very good place to start.
And knowledge is power, right?
Yeah,
So as
exactly.
women, just the more we can find out about ourselves and our bodies, because I do think our bodies are incredibly complex. And now I think, I don't know if there is a normal anymore. I don't think there is a normal, especially for fertility.
Yeah.
I think you can be so healthy, so fit in your early 30s and still find it hard to conceive.
Absolutely, we see it all the time. I see it all the time, sort of within my professional life, but also with really close friends of mine
Yeah.
and their friends and families. It's a known thing that it's not a given.
Yeah.
That it's just going to go like, oh, you know, we're young as we spend all our time trying not to get pregnant. Then you get to a certain point, you're like, that's what you want.
Get pregnant now.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not always that easy.
It is crazy because we're presented with this timeline, aren't we? And as women especially, it's like, go to university, get your first
Yeah.
job, fall in love suddenly, quickly, and have your,
Exactly.
you know? And it is just like, it's just all done almost like to like 5-year windows. And men don't necessarily have that pressure
Yeah.
because men can be first-time dads at 45. Like, what
Yeah.
does it matter? It doesn't really matter. But for women, it's these sort of like 5-year windows, and it's a lot of pressure. And I think some of what you're saying is really refreshing because it's like, get the knowledge, get the facts, make an
Yeah.
informed decision. It could be yes or it could be no to something like egg freezing, but then at least you have some power.
And that takes away that anxiety, I think, earlier on. Because I found myself in a situation where I was thinking, God, I'm 38, I've not even thought of this. I don't really even know how first I am. It just wasn't on my radar. And then it's kind of facing your fear of going there, having the test done. They could have said anything to me. And luckily everything was fine. And I think that's why I took that, not drastic action, but some people would be like, just do the round of egg freezing and then you've got it, and then just carry on with your life and see what happens. But I just thought, well, look, I feel you know, I have chanced this a little bit,
Yeah.
and I haven't got loads of time, and I you know, things are looking good, so let's just do it, and then we can see what happens. Because also bearing in mind that I wasn't with anyone, so it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to use those eggs in a couple of years.
Yes.
You know, the timeline on this could be anything. So that was why I kind of took that more, not drastic action, but to do the embryos. That was
Quick decision making
Yeah.
is a power and it's a skill. I really believe that. I think sometimes we overthink things, and maybe that comes with age as well, by the way.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
knowing yourself better and going, that's the right decision for me
Yeah.
today. Like, this is what I want to do. You touched a little bit on imposter syndrome.
Yes.
Comes up so much in conversations, and I don't know if it's like more women, we think of it more than men. I'm not really sure. Probably, I'm sure there's
I
a
think
stat
it
on
is
that.
more common in women. I was reading something about it recently. But I mean, maybe that's because guys haven't thought about it as much to put the label associated with how they're feeling.
Absolutely.
But,
how have you overcome it, especially with big like TV opportunities? You talked about just sort of like diving in and saying yes.
I think if I'm really honest as well, after I'd made Embarrassing Bodies last year, the gap between it coming out, finishing it coming out, I felt really anxious, because when it's being made, you basically go through the auditioning and they don't tell you when you're actually doing it what to do. So a lot of it is like, you're doing consultations with patients, which is what you do day to day. And then you're doing other bits of the show that were like, there's different sections of it. But really, they just depend on you kind of doing the skill they've kind of booked you for. So it's that idea, you won't get nice, you don't get the feedback of like, they're like, yeah, that was good, that was fine. But you don't really know, because you've never seen yourself on camera before. Like, I feel relaxed, I'll say it to you, because I've done things like this before and I know how it's coming across. Whereas I was like, do I actually sit there waving my arms around? Am I messing with my hair? Or am I
need to be
or
a
I'm
bigger
doing this,
type
or
of
I'm doing that? Or like,
personality?
what am I saying? What am I coming across right? Am I looking right? All these things you just don't know. And because their job is obviously to do the show, not go, oh, can you replay that to me? Or does that sound all right? Like, you can't do that. So, so that was actually for it to come out, and it was all really well received. And, that sort of putting yourself under that pressure, and actually it was really character building for me to kind of feel like, gosh, this could be.
There's so much bravery associated with putting yourself out there.
And I'm glad now, actually, I feel like, first of all, like, even if it isn't perfect or in my eyes, I mean, in terms of what we were doing with the show, it was everything they wanted to do. They wouldn't put something out that wasn't.
Yes.
But for me, I was like, actually, we all came across really well. The dynamic was right with the other presenters and the patients. And I was like, that's been a real relief for me to kind of reflect on that and be able to watch and go, yeah, that's fine. But that is quite a thing to do. And I think it's stuff like that really taking the risk, taking the plunge, does build confidence. And that's what a lot of when I do my podcast called The Confidence Clinic, it's about things like that sometimes putting yourself out there, taking risks, doing things out of your comfort zone. And the risk of that is that it might go wrong, or it might, not be what you think. But either way, it'll either teach you a lesson or redirect you to another path that is where you're meant to be going.
Yeah.
So I think for me, in building confidence to help me deal with the factors of imposter syndrome, and one of those major things is kind of self-doubt, not trusting your instincts, dwelling on the past where you think of things that have gone wrong and not supported the core belief driving your future. I think for me, it's when you do things and you build up a bank of evidence that just show you that you can, even when you think you can't. So when you're having moments where you're like, God, I feel like I don't feel like I can do that in front of camera today, or I'm not feeling that I've got any chat with the podcast today. You're like, every time you've done 20 of them, and every time you do it and you love it and it's fine.
And it's fine.
So just saying that, then it is fine. So that's the only way I personally have overcome those feelings of, I'd say they're more self-doubt really than imposter syndrome by definition, but they're definitely sort of interlinked components.
I agree. And I think it's what you just said. It's so true. And this is the doctor in you, I'm sure. Build up the bank of evidence. Because you said it perfectly, but that is like such doctor chat.
Yeah, exactly. Get the evidence.
Get the evidence, get the files, get the photocopies and scan it.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is exactly that, because I think we, all as humans, this isn't really women specific, I think we live in our own heads like so much. And a thought can spiral quite quickly. And we've had guests come on and talk about this, but like once it takes seed, if you don't stop it in its tracks, that's going to be with you for not for the whole day, but for the whole week, but for the whole month. And for some people, for most of their lives, right, they're constantly telling themselves, you cannot do this. But what you've just said there is, even if someone can get a pen and a paper and start to go, but where have I failed?
Yeah, and just have 5 minutes. And even if you did fail, what happened? Nothing. It's fine. You're still back. You're still back here doing it. I think actually another way of sometimes getting around that thought process or stopping those seeds of thought spiraling is very much who you surround yourself with as well. I feel really, really lucky. I've got a really core group of friends that are like family to me, and they're all in different walks of life, and we're all doing different stuff, and like some of them have got families, some of them haven't, that we're all doing things that might not necessarily connect us in terms of what we do day to day, but in terms of our thought process definitely does. So I think I've got people around me who would be like, who I know would tell me if like they're like, you know, don't do that again, but we'll be honest with you, they don't like put you in a false sense of security, but you know that you've got, is essentially just support.
It's like that fact that you are like basically the net product of the 5 people you spend the most time
absolutely.
with, which when you hear that and you really start to dive into it, it's such a powerful thing, because you're like, wow, I'm being influenced all the time by these 5 key people. And actually, if one of them is very negative or overly critical or constantly, that starts to weigh, especially as we get older, because we're a little bit more susceptible, I think. When you're young, you bounce out of it and you can just make friends with lots and lots of people. But actually, your friendship group becomes quite tight as you get older. And so it's really important, I think, that you assess and reassess.
And I think friends of mine that are older than me, maybe going through different stages, like say perimenopause and the menopause, one thing they do say is that they lack in confidence and anxiety becomes more, not in everyone, but like, so I think, I mean, part of that is, that's what can happen during the menopause and the symptoms of that, unfortunately, and obviously there's things that you can do to, you know, whether it be medical, psychological, whatever, as a package to help manage that. But I think they've shared that with me, and I'm like, actually, it's because like you said, when you're younger, you feel like you know, the world's your oyster, you've got different options and you're just a bit more robust to it. Whereas I think now you can be more self-critical, and one thought can easily spiral into another one.
And I think menopause is something that we don't talk about a lot. Perimenopause really is only getting coverage quite recently, that, you know, you can really get that, the signs of it showing much at, like, you know, menopause I think is almost like depicted as like this intense 2-year period where you're constantly sweating and like, you know, like all this stuff, and it's all very
more like
heightened.
physical things, and all like a thing that's like, you know.
But we're all going to go through it. So it's like, why are we avoiding talking about it firstly? If we're not going through it, we probably know someone or have seen our mothers or someone go through it. So we need to be super aware of what's happening with them, because then we get to support that person, right? And understand what's happening. So lack of confidence actually is not spoken about. But we can often not feel like ourselves, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that's one of the main symptoms that friends of mine and everyone have said. Like one that really resonated with me, a really close friend of mine was like, I just suddenly feel invisible. And like, and I was like, you know, and I look at her as like a really like, you know, big, like powerful, robust woman. And I was like, you know, it's important for me then to share back to you, reflect back to her, no, you feel like that. I'm telling you, my bank of evidence has shown you definitely are.
Here is my folder.
Here's a folder, but I'll get you to do your folder now.
We all need a Dr. Jane folder, I think, at the end of this.
Exactly. But I was like, God, you know, and she's just sitting with that. And then it's only because I'm moaning about something going, you know.
But this is real. These are hormones. This is very real.
Exactly.
And if you're not doing things to counteract what's actually physically happening in your body, like an actual shift in the makeup of like your whole being, then you are going to feel the effects.
And it's not a choice. It's you know, it's what's happening to you on a cellular level, essentially.
Absolutely. And I think now we're in an exciting time where there are older role models. Like I'm finding, especially like social media now, it's almost like these older role models are blowing up as much as the younger role models, and they're thriving in their 50s and 60s, and you're thinking, okay, like now I see what we can come out the other side and actually.
And I think that's part of it. I think if you look at the people maybe who are that bit older than us going through the menopause now, that wasn't something that was a visual thing that we were being fed. It was like, well, that's it for you now. He kind of had that vibe.
And I love that we can see life goes on. And not only life goes on,
it just gets better.
They look even more like graceful and abundant and sure of themselves. And
it's just another chapter. There's just this hump in the road almost of getting over the menopause.
And we know there are things that can do to help. I want to talk about aesthetics, which was meant to be a lot of the conversation. We've talked about so many other things. So I think aesthetics, it's really nice to have somebody on here that is not only an expert, but you're a doctor. And that was really important to me, because there's a lot of talk about aesthetics. There's a lot we see now on social media. And I think people are really dabbling in it, and they want tweakments, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think, but just going to somebody really qualified and who knows their craft, I think is important. If somebody is thinking about going and getting something done, anything that they should consider before they do so?
I think, just go off. I think recommendations is a good thing to go off, obviously, through different people or peers that have had treatments done. But I think from our side, going to somebody who is medically trained and can prescribe our key things and also experience. And the reason I say that is that I don't really, there's other people that are medics or they're based in the beauty industry who are doing aesthetic treatments, but the only thing they can't do as well as we can do it is that we're trained to recognise medical things or complications. So if I, give someone an infection or block someone's blood vessels and like that, I can see it instantly because I've got a trained eye. And secondly, I can action it instantly because I can prescribe the drugs needed to treat it. So there's no third party involved. So often people have to get, Botox is a prescription medication, antibiotics are, high lasers, things like that. So if you've got this, you need to have them at action and ready to go, and the only way is through a prescriber like me. So I think that is one thing that if anything does go wrong, and a lot of these complications actually are quite rare, and most of the times they don't happen, but no one is immune to not giving you one. So if you're going to go to someone, you need to go to someone who is, in my opinion, medically trained, has got the experience, and is able to deal with things going wrong as much as they are and making things right for you.
Because as easy and accessible as this now is, I think we forget that this is actually a procedure.
Yeah.
We almost forget these things, and I think that reminder is actually really, really important. Is there any questions they should ask? Because again, I had somebody quite younger, she was in her 20s, ask me a few questions about it, just like, do I know anyone and stuff like that, which now I do. So that's great. But actually, I was like, that's a really interesting one. Like, what should they ask? Should they ask what you're using, like if you're using Botox?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a good place to start. I think one thing that I'd say that I don't do as a practitioner is, if you came to see me, I wouldn't unpick your face and go, right, so you've asked me about like some Botox to soften off your frown lines. I don't know if it's just a personal thing in me, but I don't think it's always nice practice to rip someone's appearance apart, going, well, you need a bit of this, you need a bit of that, and what about that acne scar, and you thought about this, and your lips are a bit like that, and this isn't completely perfect. Some people do. I personally don't, first of all, because I'm not perfect. Secondly, doing something like that does affect someone's confidence, and every treatment costs money. So not only am I going to make you feel like, oh God, I feel as ugly as anything now because she's just gone. Also, the only way I'm going to fix this if I've got 5k in my pocket to do whatever. So I think from that side of it, that is being kind to the person and having a duty of care that at the end of the day, we are doctors and we're not here to give the hard sell. And that's one thing that I don't do. It probably is as well, because the sort of people I have as my patients do tend to be the younger crowd of girls and guys as well. And I feel like now it's my duty to look after the faces rather than put stuff in it.
And enhance them, right?
Yeah, so it's more of a, like going back to the confidence thing we were discussing earlier, these treatments are amazing because they can boost your confidence. If you look better, you do feel better. It's like I wouldn't come on this podcast without getting my hair blow dried and putting some makeup on it, because I wouldn't be able to speak like this because I wouldn't feel as confident. So it's kind of the same thing indirectly, that it does boost your confidence in the right hands. I'm not saying by any means, look, you've got to get rid of your wrinkles and have bigger lips to feel confident. I don't mean that at all. But for people,
do what's right for you,
if
though,
people
right?
feeling that way, then I would be delighted to talk to somebody about that. But what I don't want to do is, make someone feel small or lack confidence or just feel inferior by me going, dissecting their face. So that for me is not a red flag. Some people are fine to do it. It's just what I don't do personally, because I don't like the way people make people feel.
Of course, and it might be something they've never even thought about, and suddenly they're like, "Oh, okay, well, I've got to get that fixed." The one thing where I do know people that have had lots of, will go regularly to get Botox done, is that they always say, "Go with someone that you really like." And I just think actually it's just common sense, isn't it?
And I think the other thing is, like I always say, there's so many people doing aesthetics now, but our styles vary immensely. So if you have a look at me, like my Botox all worn off because I haven't been bothered to do it. But I'm more of a natural angle of it. So if you want more of like a more overly sort of, treated face look, I'm not your doctor. But there are many people that do offer that. So I think if you look at the person and think they look like kind of what I'm after or not, then that's a way to, it's a good guide.
one more question on this because I just really am curious. There's this sort of sense that like you can start to get Botox and it can be preventative.
Yeah.
Can you demystify this, because you're the right person to ask, because you're a doctor and you're in aesthetics?
Yeah, that is the truth. So
That is the
basically, there's two types of lines of wrinkles, either dynamic, which means you see them when you frown and lift your eyebrows up like what I've got now, or static, which means they're there regardless of expression, so permanently there. So the idea of preventing lines of wrinkles, doing an anti-aging procedure, is you're just stopping those dynamic lines of wrinkles becoming static. It's a lot easier to slow down the aging process before it's fully occurred than try to correct it when it's there. No, I'm not saying by any means start having it like when you're 20,
Yes,
not
of
at all.
course.
But I mean, when you come in, like say in your 30s, that's a good time to start.
And everyone, obviously, their level of wrinkles is different. And this is so personal, but some people might have it very badly and some people
Exactly
might not.
that. Actually, there's, the aging of the skin, so developing lines of wrinkles, parts of it is genetics, part of it is about your environment, part of it's like what you put in your body. So, all of these things do have a component.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, I've heard it and it's out there, so it's just nice actually to clear that up. And it's good to know if that is something that you're worried about or struggling with, you can go find somebody that you trust and get it treated in like a really nice way.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be this big scary thing. Thank you so much, Dr. Jane. I could
thank
talk
you for
and talk, but I know we are out of time.
We got through a lot.
Checking the timer today, but normally I'm terrible at that. I just want to finish the podcast. I mean, obviously this is called Superwoman, is it real? A lot of the guests that I have on, I'm sure they've been called Superwoman many times in their life, but actually I want to take away that phrase because it's an impossible standard and we feel rubbish when we don't live up to it. Like when I'm trying to be a superwoman, mum and businesswoman, and then I forget my daughter's friend's party, gift or something, then I feel like terrible.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
actually, I'm not a superwoman. I'm just a woman trying her best.
Yes.
So that's what the whole theme is. But I do believe like nearly every guest I've had on has just had something amazing about them. And I believe we all have superpowers.
Yes.
And that's what makes us special and unique and basically leading us to doing what we're doing. So if I had to ask you what is your superpower, maybe you've discovered it as you've turned 40 or like really been able to lean into it recently. What is it and why?
Oh, good question. I'd say my superpower is resilience. I never give up. Not anything really. So probably when it is time to give up, I'm not sure. I'll still be there to still try.
No, I think you're just getting started.
Yeah,
God.
so that is my superpower, I would say.
So go after what you want.
Just go, and just be, if you really want something bad enough, most of the time, if you just keep trying and finding different ways, you'll get it.
If you don't quit, then eventually it's going to get there. You'll be 90 and you'll get it, right? You just don't give up.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And I feel like that's what I do anyway. So that's perfect. Thank you so much for your time.
No, it was so lovely to talk to you.
And
thank you.
if you want to know more about Dr. Jane, obviously we're going to be watching her on Embarrassing Bodies. Well, I am anyway. And you can also search for her through the social media handles that we always include in the show notes and in the videos. But it has been such a pleasure to talk to you. Keep doing what you're doing and redefining the 40s for us, because that's what it's all about.
Definitely. Thanks so much for having me.